Peace is not the absence of conflict, but rather our ability to have healthy confrontation. Oftentimes in life, we go through a lot of conflict internally, externally. There could be challenges that really show us who we really are. In the face of adversity, we see who we really are in that moment, and we see who others are in those moments of facing obstacles in life. And one story that truly represents this idea is back in 2005, 2006, when I went to my very first Vipassana meditation experience. But before I can begin that journey, I have to tell you where I was at in my life at the time. So December of 2005, I was working at a nonprofit organization in Hollywood, servicing homeless and at-risk youth as a full-time youth mentor. One of my coworkers was an amazing beam of light. He was such a standout individual, supporting the young people in their creativity and their expression, their gifts, well-loved throughout the network and through the youth at large. And unfortunately, right before Christmas, December 2005, he was shot down and killed in his neighborhood in Compton, just carrying 2 handfuls of Christmas gifts to his family. And it was a robbery gone wrong, Not to say there's a right kind of robbery, but the situation turned tragic, and it was devastating for me, for my staff, for the community, for the kids. It was a really hard moment because he was such a kind-hearted individual, such a beautiful soul, And it really was hard. It was hard to be facing that level of grief so close to the holidays. And as a few weeks passed, we thought we were kind of getting through this really tough chapter of life. Lo and behold, January 2006, just 1 month later, 2 young people that I work with in the same agency, the same organization, also transcended. One of them had a heart failure and one of them was shot. Both these kids came to my poetry workshops. And it was just a really hard 2 months, as you can imagine, for all of us in the network and the community in my workplace. Super hard to be facing this level of grief. And for someone who lost his father, me, at 11 years old, having to face this grief was really tough. And it was so fascinating that I had already scheduled at my job, before this even happened, to go to Vipassana meditation retreat in February of 2006. So just literally 1 month later. So after going through this tragedy in December, January, 2 months later, I'm going to Vipassana to have an experience up in Norfolk, near Yosemite National Park in California. There's centers all over the world that essentially help people to have a sense of self-realization by teaching people the Anapata meditation, the same meditation that the Buddha utilized to find enlightenment. And they have advanced techniques around the same exact form of meditation. And when you get to Vipassana, they ask you to check in your ID, check in your wallet, check in your ego, check in your money. There's no reading, there's no writing, there's no music, there's no dancing. It's all about really committing to this practice formally for 10 days. And in these 10 days, you're taking a vow of silence. You're not talking. And you're meditating between, basically about 10 hours a day in hour increments. And keep in mind, in 2006, February, I was 25 years old. I was very novice to meditation. I never had any formal training in my life except this. And I see myself in this really profound experience. The beautiful thing about it was that in Norfolk, right outside Yosemite, it's beautiful scenery. Snow-capped mountains, trees all over the place, very serene, very reverential. It's such a reverential vibration and frequency, as you can imagine. They've done so many events there over the years for retreats and meditation, that there's deer that are walking around very close to people, because it's such a peaceful, tranquil space. And that was pretty profound to have that, that level of environment to kind of to hold you during such a tremendous, challenging experience. So after day 5, I was having a hard time, I was struggling emotionally. My back was sore, my legs were sore. I felt, having to confront this grief that I just was going through in life was really tough for me emotionally. And, they separated the men and the women on both sides of the experience. as far as the camp there, so the men stayed on one side, the women stayed on another side, but we all meditated together every day in the big sanctuary. And my roommate, during this experience, after day 5, he left. He quit. He gave up. He couldn't take it anymore. And I found myself in the middle of this experience on day 5, all by myself in my room, ready to give up as well. Like, hey, my roommate gave up. I don't know why I'm here. What am I doing here? This is too hard. I don't know why I put myself through this crazy experience. I was having a really tough time and questioning everything about myself. But I remembered, given all that I just went through with my coworker passing and the young people, all the commitments I made to my staff, people I work with, to my family, to my friends, and even beyond that, just a commitment to myself. I really wanted to get through this experience, but I realized something profound. You know what I mean? Like, after every sit each night during this experience, there's a Dharma talk given by the foundational leader through a video module. And they were talking about attachments and suffering and how they're related. And I thought about that quote the Buddha said, attachment's the root of all suffering. And sometimes our expectations could be a form of attachment. And I realized I was probably suffering because I had some attachments and expectations around this experience and what I would get out of it. I thought to myself, I had the expectation to be more spiritual when I got out of it, to be, a better person, a better man, more positive, more awakened. There's nothing good, bad, right, or wrong necessarily with those expectations, but they were expectations. And I decided that night, I'm like, you know what? My new goal coming out of this experience was one thing, and it was to complete. I just want to complete this experience, regardless of what I get out of it. I just want to come to completion with this course. And so I set my new goal that evening, and I woke up the next morning on day 6, right after the middle point, the middle path, as the Buddha says, and I started my morning meditation in the sanctuary. We were being guided, by the guide, because there is a guide that guides you through instruction. And before we sat, it was instructed to us to do our best to hold our posture without moving. Get through this entire 1 hour sit without moving an inch, and just hold your posture and breathe into whatever comes up. So I'm sitting through it about 20 minutes through, whatever it was, 20, 30 minutes. And of course, my back starts getting tight. My legs are cramping up. I'm sweating. I'm feeling this like stress and strain on my body, physically and emotionally. And it got to the point where I had to tell myself, you know what, no matter what happens, even if I die, I'm gonna hold this posture. And it wasn't that I was actually going to die, but I feel like I just had to confront myself and say that because I needed that level of resilience in me. And so I just stayed strong through it. I was reaching this crescendo level of pain in my body and mentally and emotionally. And then something really profound happened as I was confronting these emotions and this physical challenge. When I hit the crescendo of the pain, all of a sudden it just turned into bliss. All of a sudden it just turned into this feeling of joy, and I couldn't feel that pain in my body anymore. And as I sat with that joy and that bliss for a little while longer, it started to turn into this like nirvanic feeling. It turned into this like deep level of nirvana inside my heart space. I was like, oh my God, I'm having this like awakened experience. And it just felt like immense amount of love and rapture in my heart. And then all of a sudden, I just feel like I could see myself for a moment outside of my body. I kid you not. I feel like I saw myself meditating below. I was having an outer body experience, and I felt this like superhuman power rushing through me. It's something I've never experienced before. And as I've told this story and asked questions about what I was feeling, it can only be described in my mind and through others sharing their belief of this as a samadhi experience, a oneness with God, a oneness with Source kind of interaction through my meditation. I'd never felt this level of high on any sacrament I'd ever taken in my life at that point. It was a profound level of just like transformation. And I remember I was so blissed out and nirvanic. By the time I woke up from this meditation and opened my eyes, everyone had left the sanctuary. I was so committed to it and so in it, in this rapture. And it was like I just had this visceral shift in my body because I was confronting the deepest levels of my pain, confronting the deepest levels of my emotion and my physical challenges that were coming up in my strain. and something broke through me. For the rest of that retreat, for the next couple days, every experience was not like that, but it made it a lot easier to get through the days after having that kind of breakthrough experience. And I remember by the time I got to the very end on the last day and we were given guidance that we can talk, I was talking to the people that I've been meditating with for 10 days, for hours upon hours. And I remember I broke out in this rapture of laughter. I couldn't stop laughing. I was like, oh my God, that was crazy. How did we do that? I was just so enthralled with laughter for like 30 minutes or whatever it was. By the time I can talk again, it was like uncontrollable tears of joy. And it's so profound because I feel like going into that retreat, not only was I confronting the grief and the emotions, but I had so much like mental chatter in my mind in my mid-20s, so much like judgment, I would tell myself, your voice is terrible, you're a terrible speaker, you look terrible. Like I would say all these negative things about myself in my mind, like a broken record going off over and over. But after that Vipassana experience, after reaching a deep level of peace and confronting deep parts of my trauma, pain, shadow, darkness, grief, all the stuff, that mental chatter was never came back as strong. It never was the same again. Of course, I've had moments in my life that were difficult, but nothing that reached that level of difficulty that used to exist prior. It was a powerful marker point and a powerful transition for me. So for me, that made me realize that, yes, peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to have healthy confrontation. And I feel like meditation is healthy confrontation. Yoga, eating correctly, exercise, and of course, utilizing your creativity, your music, your poetry, your songwriting, your prayer is such a profound way to confront what you're feeling and transmute it and turn it into something beautiful. And I realized over time that, I did another Vipassana retreat 10 years later, and I realized after I sat through that one, it's like that practice was not just about, teaching me how to meditate with my eyes closed. It was teaching me a practice and how to utilize this level of observation, because meditation is observation. It's not clinging to the joy and the bliss that can come through it, or it's not averting and resisting the pain that can show up. It's about being in the center, that middle path, being the observer and witnessing it all, just looking at it all. And in doing so, it teaches you how to confront life when your eyes are awake, how to show up for life when challenges arise financially in your life, or relationships, or physical confrontation with other people. Can you be in that middle path? Can you be the observer? Can you not react, but rather respond in a correct way, in an enlightened way? And I feel like it taught me how to show up for my life when my eyes are awake through the Vipassana practice. And so I feel like we all get to choose. We all get to choose in life who we want to be, despite whatever obstacles, challenges, or adversity is in the way. I'm a firm believer to observe, to see what it's teaching you. That's a powerful question you can always ask. What is this situation teaching me? What quality or virtue is this enabling me to become because I'm facing this difficulty? And if we can channel that in a healthy way, through our creative practice, through our poetry, through our songwriting, through our voice, through our music, through our dance, through our art, through our expression, wondrous things can come out of that alchemized process. So peace is not the absence of conflict, but rather our ability to have healthy confrontation. If you enjoyed this message, I invite you to share it, and feel free to join me, tap into the Keys of Kreation community. We're meeting every single week virtually to write poetry, to write songs, to open our voices to be seen, to utilize our trauma, turn it into triumph, turn our mess into our message, and shift suffering into songs to heal ourselves and inspire the world. You're invited to tap in with me, to create with me. And thank you so much for receiving this transmission. Sending you so much love in your journey, and I'm wishing you the best always. Blessings.